Story 1. I work at a liquor store. A small, weird little liquor store that was formerly a bottle depot. There's 2 floors, the top floor being an office space with a bathroom, a huge backroom cooler where we store the beer, and a receiving room at the very back of the store. All of these areas are relevant to the story. There's also a large inn next door, but I'll talk more about that later. I like working at this store. The location means we don't get many customers, save for the odd trucker or inn patron. Myself being quite introverted, it's nice to just be able to sit back with a book and get some time to myself. However, the store always has sort of creeped me out, especially the back room. I'm not sure why. I guess it's because it's very large, and with no sound other than the AC units keeping the beer refrigerated. But it always gave me the feeling that someone was watching me. Well, last night, about an hour and a half before closing, I was doing my normal duties of washing the floors and pulling bottles forward. There were no customers in the store, and there was no sound other than the radio. Suddenly, I heard someone whistle a tune. It wasn't a specific song, just 3 seemingly random notes. I knew it couldn't be the song on the radio, because I had already heard the same song play earlier in the day. It was also too clear to have come from outside. I was a little creeped out, but I moved on pretty quickly. About 15 minutes later, I went to put the mop bucket back in the receiving room, the room that freaks me out the most, but unfortunately where the mop is stored. Upon entering the room, I heard the muffled sound of a woman's voice. Very brief, not loud enough for me to hear what she said. I only heard it once, but I didn't stick around long enough to hear it again, quickly dumping the bucket and getting out of there. Finally, at closing time, I did all my closing duties, cashing out the till, turning off the lights, all that good stuff. I was still pretty disturbed at the stuff I heard earlier, so I was excited to leave. Before leaving, I went upstairs to get changed and use the bathroom. Now, something I forgot to mention is that on the top floor, there's a small window that overlooks the back room. Curiosity got the better of me, and after using the washroom, I figured I'd take a quick peek in the window to see if someone was in there. I didn't even make it all the way to the window when I heard a very loud thud, like a large heavy book being dropped coming from a small room on the top floor. Well, needless to say, I was out of there. I ran downstairs, grabbed my stuff, turned off the rest of the lights, armed the alarm, locked the door and hightailed it to my car. I'm not sure if anyone had died at the former bottle depot, but what I do know for sure is this. At the inn next door, a woman was found dead, wrists slit in a bathtub in one of the rooms. I don't know the whole story, but from what I read online, it was found to be a murder rather than a suicide. Story 2. I'm almost second-guessing whether I should post this on Reddit, only due to the amount of people who dismiss sleep paralysis as something nothing other than your brain being your brabe. But I will, just for those who've had similar encounters. When I turned 18, I moved into my first apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that had at one time been 3 floors with 3 apartments, but had been sectioned into 6 smaller rabbit run apartments. It was cheap and good for me and my boyfriend's first place, but we soon realized the area was littered with crime, drugs, and whatever other illegal activity you could imagine. New Bedford, Massachusetts, if you've ever heard of it. Our building was for the most part spared, until a drug dealer moved in and our house eventually became unbearable to live in. That was just a little backstory, but as far as my encounter with the shadow people, at the time I had no idea they were a thing, and had no idea what sleep paralysis was. At the time, me and my boyfriend Chris were also in the habit of pulling our queen-size mattress into the living room to watch movies all weekend, as we only had 2 recliners and an older TV in our actual room. I woke up one morning, as I usually did, facing Chris, whose back was turned towards me. The only thing was, I could not move anything but my eyes. It was already daytime, and the room was lit with sunlight, and I tried to move and began to become irritated when suddenly my irritation turned to fear. I felt someone behind me. Not someone, but a few people. I strained my eyes to look up as much as I could, and I could see 3 shadows. I remember them being leaning over me and running their hands on my leg and lower back. I began to panic and looked towards Chris to try and will him awake or move or something. I felt as though I was being searched, not in a sexual way, but a violating way, almost like I had something they wanted. I really began to panic, when suddenly I was able to jolt upright and look around. Nothing. I woke Chris up, but told him I had had a dream and to lay back down, as I was doubting the reality of the situation at that point. I am the type of person to look up any questions I have online, and that's the day I found out that I had sleep paralysis. Later that week, I asked a few of my neighbours if anything strange had happened to them, and one older lady told me about how the house has had a lot of overdose deaths, and that many tenants have reoccurring nightmares and have had experiences of their own. I'm still a bit skeptical myself, but I've never had anything like that happen again. Also, my boyfriend ended up telling me a story of being at his father's and regularly waking up not being able to move, only to hear someone running up the stairs to his room, or seeing someone standing in the corner of his room. I think we have a lot to learn about this whole occurrence. Story 3. These incidents happened to me several years ago. I've told my story to a handful of people, but I thought I'd share with you guys as well. I'm not much of a storyteller, so excuse my poor writing skills. I was 14 years old at the time, and was a skeptic about ghosts and the supernatural and all that. After what happened to me this day, I became a believer. It was summertime, and just like any other day, I played outside with my friends. When it finally started to get dark out, I'd come home, eat dinner with the family, and then head upstairs to my room to watch some TV. To give you a visual, once you headed up the stairs, you could go left or right. To the left would be the theatre room, and to the right would be another right turn to the hallway where our rooms were. The first door to the left was mine. The following door was the bathroom, then the spare room. All the way at the end was my sister's room. If you went into my room, directly in front of you would be the bed against the back and right wall under the window. To the left was my dresser, and next to that, in the corner, was my TV stand that my dad helped me install. I don't remember what I was watching this night, but I remember turning off the TV and getting ready for bed. After I turned off the TV, I would usually watch some kind of RuneScape videos on my iPod. Anyways, I turned off my iPod and tried to go to sleep. After lying there for a couple of minutes, I heard a clicking sound coming from the TV of my room. I immediately turned on the light, curious to what was making that noise. As soon as the light turned on, the clicking stopped. I got up to investigate what was making that sound. I started clicking buttons to try to see where the sound was coming from. I concluded it was either my television or my cable box. I brushed it off as some kind of glitch or something and went back to bed. About a week later, the day was more or less the same. I headed upstairs and decided to watch The Ugly Truth starring Katherine Hale and Gerard Butler. I had seen this movie before, but for some reason I liked watching it again. I'd say halfway into the movie, I got a certain urge that teenage boys get all the time. I'll let you figure out what that urge was. Naturally, I pulled out the iPod and visited my favourite website. I kept the movie playing while watching my iPod in case someone walked by and could somehow hear through my door and headphones what I was watching. I'm a couple of minutes into my session when I hear this annoying clicking again. I turned on the light, and just like the last time, the clicking stopped. I got up and unplugged the TV, hoping that would solve the issue, and got back to bed. I started watching again, and a few moments later, I heard this deafeningly loud scream. The kind of scream you would imagine someone being tortured would make. The only thing I could compare it to is, if you ever went into a new home and yelled or screamed, you could hear the echo of the walls. It was like that, but it sounded like a female in excruciating pain. I was scared out of my mind. I felt this very heavy presence in my room, and none of this was making any sense to me. I hid under my covers, shocked and feared for my life. I was completely lost what to do. I think I eventually fell asleep while I was still hiding under the covers, because I woke up still under the blanket. The next morning, I woke up and headed downstairs to eat breakfast with the family. We were having our usual morning conversation until I brought up if anyone heard anything last night. Confused, my dad asked me, "Why? Did you hear something?" I told him I heard a scream, and my parents dismissed it as probably some neighborhood kids playing around outside. I knew this couldn't be the case because A, no way a scream that loud comes from outside, through my closed window, and into my freaking eardrums, and B, it was like 12 a.m, and no parent would let their kids play outside that late. The conversation then switched to something else, and we didn't give it any more thought. After breakfast, I confronted my sister face to face to ask her if she had heard anything last night. After all, she was right down the hall, and couldn't possibly have heard nothing. But she told me she didn't hear anything. So there I was, thinking maybe I'm going crazy, or maybe I experienced something no one else was ever going to believe. Since then, no other strange incidences have happened to me. I still remember that heavy presence feeling like it was yesterday. It feels like pure hatred, evil, like someone very angry is watching. Any time I enter a room and get that feeling, I leave without explanation. Story 4. A little bit of background. The house we moved into was built in 1981, and we bought it from a man in his 30s living by himself. I also have been sensitive to the paranormal, and was actually offered by a witch doctor in the Philippines if I wanted to open up my third eye, and said nope to that fast. So many things would happen at the house that I became desensitized. These are the ones that stood out to me the most. Anyway, here goes. My first paranormal experience was when I was making dinner at the counter of my kitchen and heard what sounded like a young child run across the floor. I turned around and no one was there. I am the youngest of 3 children. I'd often hear the dining table chairs move at night when no one was home, and I'd just lock myself in the bedroom and turn up the TV. I'd also hear doors open and shut for no reason at all, and mostly when I was alone. I'd say most of the time too that I'd feel someone was watching. I came home from work very tired and went straight to my bedroom in the basement. At the time, my brother had a girlfriend with 3 kids. I was trying to sleep and heard the kids jumping on the bed. Pissed me off. I ran upstairs about to give them hell, and I opened the door and no one was there. I was actually home alone. I've had a dream that I watched myself sleeping from above my body, then looked over across the room and saw a blanket with shapes under it and heard a giggle. I walked over and uncovered it only to find 2 kids, and they pulled my arm and I started falling, like one of those falling from a cliff dreams. Woke myself up before hitting the ground. I was passing a bedroom that my brother's girlfriend's kid, who was 2 at the time, he was sleeping over. And then I heard him say, "Shh, she'll hear you." Gave me the creeps. We had a long dark hallway in the basement where my bedroom was, and I always felt like someone was there waiting at the end. I had a friend come over that was sensitive to ghosts, and I've never told him anything about the house, and he said, "There's something in your hallway." At the end of that hallway was my bedroom. This is the moment I realized that I needed to get out of the house. I had sleep paralysis, and there was a dark shadow beside my bed that reached down and started to choke me. I felt every single finger on my throat as I tried to move and scream, but nothing came out. Tears rolled down my face, and I remembered my mum telling me to kick whenever I had sleep paralysis, so I did, and woke up. I touched my face as I gasped for air, and my face was wet from all my tears. I didn't sleep that night, and decided I needed to move out. I did about 2 months later. When I moved out, my brother started renovating that basement, specifically the bathroom beside my old room where I had my terrifying experience, and he calls me on the phone. He sounded nervous and said that he found children's clothing stuffed in the wall and that they were stained with something dark. He asked me to come over, and when I got there, the house felt uneasy, like something was disturbed. I took a closer look at the clothing, and they were for someone young, like the kids I dreamt about. We called the police, and they came and picked up the clothes in the bag, and they didn't say much. My brother sealed up the wall again and moved out a couple of months later. Since then, I've always felt that the man that choked me had something to do with maybe the children that possibly died, or have had something happen to them in the house. Story 5. I am 28, and I live in New England. I grew up in Massachusetts, and that's where most of these experiences happened. I studied witchcraft in my early and late teens, and many of my encounters are during this time. I had a best friend named Vic who was Brazilian. I pretty much lived at his house because I was there all the time. Me and Vic practiced the white arts, and in many ways it made me see just how unique the world is. Vic's house was roughly 100 feet from a parking lot on his street that led to a baseball park and a small park for children. It was in the woods behind the park that we had our coven, a large circle of stones where we practiced. The street that he lived on was by far the oddest I have ever seen. There were close to 30 houses on that street, yet at any given time, only 3 to 5 were occupied. For the most part, we owned that street. Now, the reason why I mentioned that my friend was Brazilian is because his nickname in Portuguese was Catahu, which translates to loogie, as in hokaloogie, because he always would spit. It was very common for us to have the house to ourselves, and we would always have friends over, until they started dealing with the things we had. Then they decided to stop coming over. It was the end of summer, and about a week before school, but still warm. We were eating pizza and playing video games at around 10 p.m. when it started. My friend Vic had a cat named Shadow, and he rarely ever left the house. We started to notice that his cat was chasing and trying to attack something we couldn't see. He would run around and chase something throughout the kitchen that seemed to not be there. We paused our games and began to look around for whatever he was chasing. And then we heard it. From outside we heard what sounded like Vic's stepfather call him by his nickname. We heard from down the street, "Catahu!" We went outside and looked around, but found nothing. We noticed that most of the street lights were no longer working, and we immediately went back in and grabbed our knives and decided to look around, but it stopped, so we went back in. A few minutes later, we heard it again. This time we stood on his front porch and waited outside when we heard it from the parking lot right down the sidewalk from his house. He looked at me and told me that he was really scared that his stepfather was hurt and that we needed to look for whoever was calling him. After a little bit I decided to join him, and we again armed ourselves and then we searched for flashlights. My heart sank when we found out that the batteries were all gone. But Vic had some torches in his garage that were full, and we had some extra lighters, so we decided to use those and we began to make our way down the sidewalk towards the parking lot. When we noticed that the lights on the street would dim and go out. It was not too uncommon for this part of the city to occasionally lose power, but this was beyond a power surge. The parking lot was a common-looking lot made from rolled tar, with the occasional sealed crack. Every 20 feet there was a light for the cars parked in the lot. There was only one way out, and that was the entrance and exit that we used. We approached the lot, and we made a chilling discovery. We had found dead animals in front of the lot before, but now we had found 3 dead mice laid out from largest to smallest in front of the lot where it met the street. To this day I have not had that feeling of pure dread. We made sure to keep the torches lit and stood at the beginning of the lot. Vic called out to his stepfather and waited for a response. From the darkness we saw a cat move towards us. It appeared to be Shadow, Vic's cat. The cat ran back into the lot, and as he did, we heard the voice call out, "Cat-a-hoo," again. This time we decided to run and try to find the source. This was the biggest mistake. The cat disappeared, and now we were alone and it started to get worse. We noticed that the lights in the lot were no longer working, and it started to get cold. I mean like winter cold. I had on shorts and a t-shirt and so did he. This cold was so bad that it hurt our skin. We also noticed that, as hard as it may be to contemplate, it was getting darker. We both stood in quiet listening to the echo of that phantom voice, and we noticed that even our voices now began to echo in the lot. Mind you, this lot is right off the street. There are houses on both sides, yet it sounded as if we had entered a cave. And then another sound entered our ears, the sound of heavy and big footsteps that had started from the far end and began to make haste towards us. It was at this point that we both said at the same time, "We fucked up." We turned around and made our way, or tried to make our way back onto the sidewalk and make it home. Except now, there were no lights but our torches, and the darkness was so thick that we could barely see each other's faces, unless the torches were in front of us. The total length of this parking lot was at best 150 feet. I'm hefty, but 150 feet is nothing and he was twice my size. We both ran as fast as we could until we were out of breath. But we were still in the darkness. It was getting colder. I was shaking, trying to keep the torch lit. From all around us the phantom voice called out to him, and then we heard from beneath us a deep, dark voice say, "Kata." And as we turned, we saw a scaly jet-black face leap back into the darkness. We decided to go back to back and walk in unison to keep the light in front and back. From all around us we could see black and scaly objects move in the dark as if we had torches almost right against the darkness. Somehow we found the edge of the parking lot, and as if opening a door, we walked out of the lot and into the street. The lights all over the street turned back on, but the lot remained black. The mice were now half-eaten but still there. We ran the 100 feet back to his house and we ran in with the torches still lit. We put them out and ran to get blankets due to the cold. It was during this time that we were hit with another shock. We had not looked up but rather saw the glare of the streetlights shine down as we ran, and as such, we had not noticed that it was light blue outside. We left the property close to 11 p.m, an hour after it had started. When we returned, it was after 6 a.m. The skin on my legs was red from the cold, and as we looked around for extra blankets to bundle up from the cold, we were hit again. As we opened up his closet door, his cat Shadow was there sleeping. We had locked him in as we had looked for flashlight batteries and forgot to let him out. He was never outside. We slept until maybe 5 p.m, and we were awakened by his brother and mother. Vic asked about his stepfather, and we learned that he was back in Brazil and wouldn't be back until November. His mother and brother were not there long. His mother worked a few hours away and rented a hotel during the week. His brother lived with his girlfriend. A few hours later, we were alone again. We realized we were hungry, so we made some steaks. For the next 2 days, we never left the house and always had our knives on us. Even throughout the rest of the year, other people in the neighborhood started to notice all the dead animals found in front of the lot, including a dead cat. It has taken me many years to open up about my life and the things I have gone through. I do not know what to make of the beings in that lot, or the cold. Story 6. To put it shortly, there is a reoccurring, tall, smiling old man who keeps appearing randomly in my life. I'll explain. I go to school up in Chicago and fly down to my home in Texas quite often. One time while I was home, I went to the mall with my brother and mum just window shopping. While in one of the stores, I looked outside one of the front windows, and sitting on a bench, sitting facing inside the store, was a tall, elderly old man staring at me. The unsettling part, which startled me at first, was his unnaturally forced smile. He was only smiling with his mouth, meaning his eyes stayed the same. It was almost as if he was paralyzed with the corners of his mouth up in a smile position. I assumed there was something wrong with him, pointed him out to my mum, who said she didn't see anything. He continues to smile and stare at me. I just assumed she had a bad angle. Either way, just an odd moment. He never stopped the same look on his face the whole time we were there. Flash forward to a few days ago with me walking into my gym in Chicago, when the same man is walking out, smiling his demented smile and staring at me. We cross paths, and he breaks his eye contact and keeps walking until he leaves the building, never once relaxing his face. I look around to see if anyone else saw the freaky dude, and no one is looking up. I knew it was him, but I guess just realized the strangeness of my situation. I told my girlfriend, also the only one I've told who thinks it absolutely could be some kind of spiritual thing, whether that be good or bad. I am a Christian, so of course I assume bad, as how could something so creepy be benevolent? Anyways, I just need some help. I've looked all over the internet, and I can't find any kind of disorder where one is paralyzed into a smiling face, making me more disturbed. Story 7. My school always had stories about the paranormal, but I never experienced any of it. So this story isn't long, but this is my most unexplainable thing that gets my head scratching really hard. So one day, my friend, who was a girl, went to the ladies' restroom in the school. The restroom was filthy, and it is located pretty close to the classroom. She went there with her friend and she saw a girl went in there first, but she didn't see her face. But she said that the girl looked really, really pale. It is pretty rare to find pale girls around here, since my country is a really hot, sunny place. When my friend went in there, she heard the door locked, and that is the only stall that is clean. So my friend waited for her to come out, but she didn't hear anything at all, and the pale girl was in there for a long time. My friend got worried and started knocking on the door and asking if she was all right, but there was no answer. She asked again, but still no answer. Both of them were worried about the girl, and one of them climbed to check out what the girl was doing in there, but when my friend looked inside the stall, there was no one in there, but the door was still locked from the inside. Both of my friends were terrified. They did see the girl that went in there and heard her lock the door. They had to call one of the teachers to break the door open. So yeah, this was the weirdest thing I've ever heard about my school. I think it may be the jinns because during that time the school's paranormal stuff was getting worse. It happened during the day and at night. Thank you for watching and or listening to this video. You may have noticed in the last story a difference in the audio quality. Since starting this channel, I have had some phenomenal support from you, my listeners and subscribers. So I wanted to reward you with some improved audio quality by upgrading my recording equipment. From now on, my videos will have this more professional sounding audio, which I hope will improve your listening experience. Thank you for all your continued support. All the stories in this collection were posted to the subreddit Paranormal. In some cases, the people who posted these are genuinely looking for answers. Please follow the links and comment on their posts if you have any insight. If you enjoyed this video, please show your support by hitting the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Also, feel free to check out my Twitter account in the video description for more updates on my channel and projects I'm working on. Once again, thank you for watching.